the 80s. That's probably one of the first memories I have, was just like tracing cartoon strips out of. I didn't even know I was tracing. You know what I mean? You don't
Right.
have this concept of what you're doing as a child. I told someone else, I think I was going to school during like the Satanic Panic, where like anything Dungeons and Dragons or anything that was a little bit rock and roll, it was like it's the devil or something. I would ditch school and go to Image Comics. Don't ditch school, kids. Don't do that.
VeeFam, what's up? I am Mr. Messer, but you can call me Rob, and I am back with another episode of the VeeFam Sessions. And I am very, very excited to be on with founder of Draw or Die, amazing writer and artist, and our own comic creator of V Friends, Mr. DJ Coffman. DJ, how are you?
Awesome. I'm always awesome. And thanks for having me on. It's such a pleasure to talk to you and the V Friends community in general. So I'm stoked.
So pumped and grateful for your time. And like it feels like you only officially, and we'll get into it, but it feels like you have only been like officially on the books for a couple months, but it really does feel like a long time. You've been churning and burning the content, the comics, and it just feels like, you know, what did we do before we had the V Friends comics? Like, so thank you for everything that you're bringing to us on the daily. Literally. Before we get into it, though, I'd love to take a step back. If you can give us the quick cliff notes, 55-second, 2-minute cliff notes on who DJ Coffman is, way before you even heard the name Gary Vee.
Yeah, sure. I've been settling into calling myself just a cartoonist. You know, I've always had you know, what my school teachers called tunnel vision for cartoons, cartoon tunnel vision, my entire life. So I was lucky enough to do that for 13 years full time, and then transitioned over into, but yeah, that's my passion, you know, like drawing and comics. I'm really into the craft. I get deep into the craft of it. Not always the most lucrative career, I must say, but yeah, it's what I've always done. That's kind of what defines who I am as a storyteller and cartoonist and artist.
And I mean, taking it back even further, let's go back. You know, you just mentioned school. We were talking off the recording about school and teaching. Were you a doodler as a kid? Is it something that you always aspired to be?
Oh yeah, I mean, as far as back as I can remember, I was always drawing something. So like many of my contemporary, you know, friends and colleagues in comics, I was tracing Garfield out of newspapers. That was in the 80s. That's probably one of the first memories I have, was just like tracing cartoon strips out of. I didn't even know I was tracing. You know what I mean? You don't
Right.
have this concept of what you're doing as a child. And then I did a lot of that. And of course there was parental kind of figures around, you know, adults saying like, "Oh, that's cute. You should work for Walt Disney one day." It just seemed like this pipe dreamy thing that people would say. And I didn't even understand what a job was. And then about 8 years old, I discovered G.I. Joe number 21 on the racks in the 1980, I forget, 1980 something. And there was no words in it. There were no words to read. It was all pictures. And the whole book was an adventure story. And I had this epiphany, this moment where I was like, somebody drew this. Like, this could be a job. This could be like, you grew up to be an astronaut or a fireman. I was like, I want to do whatever this is. And there was no roadmap for that. There was no internet. There was nobody where I lived that could tell me how to do that. I just kind of was like, that's what I want to do. So that's what I did. So a lot of back in elementary school, I learned how to draw Eddie from Iron Maiden. I don't know if you're familiar. So I learned to draw that because a high school kid had left an Iron Maiden album on the bus stop. And I stopped and looked at it and I was like, what is that? That is neat. And I learned how to draw, like, probably pretty crudely, Eddie over and over and over again. So you can imagine school teachers in the 80s were like, there's something wrong with this kid. You know, he's drawing like scary looking stuff, you know.
That's funny.
But I was always kind of drawn to that. And it did get me in a lot of, you know, I won a lot of art contests in school, but also got me into a lot of, like, you know, quote unquote trouble back then.
That's so fun. So, I mean, did you keep it up through the years, high school? Are you know, consciously taking classes or reading your craft?
Yeah, my trajectory, actually, speaking of that, like in the 80s, school was just different, right, for kids. And told someone else, I think I was going to school during like the Satanic Panic, where like anything Dungeons and Dragons or anything that was a little bit rock and roll, it was like it's the devil or something. So they put me in like this special class for well, this kid needs extra care because he, not that he's going to be a shooter or anything like that. That was way before, like this was in the 80s. But I hated it because I went to this class where all the bully kids were there. So all the kids that used to pick on me and get kicked out and go to the bully class, I was now in that class with all the kids that would make fun of me, and but I had to learn to kind of get along there for like a couple years. I think I was there for about a year before we moved to Southern California. So Southern California, I had a really good experience, like going into what we'd call middle school now, 7th grade. My 7th grade art teacher was Fred Crump Jr., and Fred Crump Jr. was a children's book author on the side. He drew his own illustrated children's books. And his whole classroom was like walking into a comic strip. So it was like heaven. It was like, for me, I was like, this is the raddest place ever. But he was retiring that year. So I only got 1 year of Mr. Crump, but he really kind of took me aside and like, he could see, like, I guess, as an art teacher, you can kind of see the kids that have the spark or something, as he described to me later on in life. And he really would take me aside and give me, like little pointers here and there. But so that was middle school. And then in high school, it kind of shifted to where I had like more of a fine arts teacher, Mrs. Wolf, shout out Mrs. Wolf, who actually was the one that was saying that I was cartoon tunnel vision. She like complained to my parents and said like, this is all he wants to do. When there's an assignment like, let's paint like Picasso or something like that, I was painting Garfield, or I was painting a comic strip character. It was always back to cartoons or He-Man or stuff from the 80s, and she hated it. Like, so I got to learn really fast that the fine art world really didn't see comics or cartoons as real art. They were like, that's like garbage. Like, that's the lower rung stuff. And being a teenager, that I really rebelled against that. I didn't like that. Anybody that told me I couldn't draw comics, I just was like, no, I'm not listening to that person. And it was that time too that somebody from like the Rhode Island School of Design had come to the high school there. I went to Palm Springs High, and they were like pretty much, I guess, saying that I could have a full scholarship to go to Rhode Island School of Design, which is a very good school.
Great school for that, yeah.
And, at 16 or 17, whatever I was like, I don't want to go to an art school where I'm going to be treated like that. Because that was my perception of art teacher being like that. I was like, I don't want them to all judge me because this is what I want to do. Looking back now, I had no one else to guide me to tell me like, that's not going to be your experience if you go, to the art school. So I just kind of went straight off into comics from there, really. I would ditch school and go to Image Comics. Don't ditch school, kids. Don't do that. But Anaheim wasn't too far away, and I had a connection at Image Comics there at their main headquarters. So they would like always have open door policy to like let the teenagers come in and kind of see how the sausage is made inside of Image Comics. Cool. So I got to meet like Todd McFarlane and like all my heroes at the time. I got to meet them when I was a teenager. I wasn't a very good artist though, I gotta say. So they humored me though and said like, yeah, stick with it, kid. One day you'll.
Right. Yeah, and look at you now.
Yeah, look at me now. so it's a long time ago for sure, but yeah.
On the whole like school ecosystem of and kind of fostering some of this creativity and what kids want to do, as someone that's been on the inside of those lines, it really has taken such a drastic turn for the worst, just in my perspective, not letting kids have that as an outlet. And me personally, in my classroom, I always push the kids to draw, whether it's math, show your thinking with a doodle or drawing, or just if you're not, if someone's having a breakdown or having a really emotionally tough time, tell me what happened in words or pictures. And 8 out of 10 times, the kid will draw a picture. Yeah. And even me, when I sat down and got in the dirt with the kids and drew, like something just happens to you. And I love like looking through your stuff. There's a through line of you saying, drawing is good medicine, like drawing's the
Yeah.
best, and it's very true. Like art therapy, like I couldn't believe in it more. Just something happens to you when you are doing that. And even on your streams now, there's just a sense of calmness. There's an overwhelming washover of like, this is a nice, safe space where like it's just gonna be okay. So I guess that was just a rant, an aside that I just think aligns with the more I looked into you, and now I'm hearing you talk about your experience. It's just a lot of kids need this as an outlet. So I'm happy that you're putting out so much content, because I think especially with a lot of the V Friends demographics and target audiences, I think a lot of kids you're gonna help through the cycle just by modeling this.
Yeah, I think as far as education goes, I mean, I had those experiences. I had the 50-50 experience there. I had the good art teacher who had that direction for me. But of course, in the 7th or 8th grade, you don't really know. I mean, I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't know how to do it, or, how much hard work it would be. But I wouldn't say my perception of like all teachers were bad or something like that, because I had some really, I don't know how I passed math, to be honest with you. I laugh now. I raised 3 boys. They went to high school and off to college, and I'm 48 now. And, when they would be in math class, I'd be like, I don't even know how I did this. Because I had a math teacher named Mr. Nagy. And Mr. Nagy, I would go to that class in high school with a stack of Bristol board, like 11 by 17, like I was on my way to like the art studio. And I would just sit in his class in the back. I would pencil like comic book stuff, and he was cool with it. Like, I don't even remember taking a math class, but he could see that was what I was going to do, and I learned enough with all that. Now I kind of I'm kind of good at math now, which is weird, because, measurements, proportions, ratios, like those are all things that made sense. I had to actually use in printing and publication. And so now I'm very good with that. And I think I learned all that in Mr. Nagy's class, just like through osmosis. I don't remember learning anything in that class, but it was just, he was such a good teacher that I was actually, he knew that's how to teach me. Like, was to let me do my thing, so I didn't rebel and just not come to class. Yeah. And now I see teachers today, like even when my kids were coming up, and even now I have step kids in middle school, and it seems like the teachers' hands are very tied with what they're allowed to say or do, or don't say this, don't look at a kid the wrong way, or something like that. Everything's so eggshells, and I'll hear something, and I'll be like, well, why don't we just XYZ? Why don't you just fix? Why don't you just do this or that or this? And you just can't. You can't even buy your own art supplies for your classroom. Sometimes, like, there's rules and regulations at different school boards. It's
a funny little world.
Yeah, I have a lot of empathy for teachers, and children not respecting, their elders, or even just like respecting situations. So it's one of the most challenging jobs. I can see why there's like a shortage of folks wanting to do that. You probably know quite a bit about what I'm talking about. But,
yeah. It's a very funny little world, and speaking of that, I mean, there's a lot of education that is you do, maybe consciously or subconsciously, both on the streams. But I want to get into V Friends, obviously. Yeah. But before we do that, I want to just quickly touch on Draw or Die, which from the outside looking in, it looks like something that a community that you developed to educate, to kind of foster, a lot of the things that we're talking about. So I'd love to just ask you about the origin of that, and just have the audience hear it from you.
Yeah. So quickly, during the pandemic, when there was a lot of lockdowns, I was feeling real anxiety. I had a lot of anxiety too. I thought that would be like a dream, being locked down inside, like, draw forever, like, great. But I had anxiety like everyone else, I think, and like, what's going to happen in the world or whatever, scary stuff. And then I just started putting out my own artwork, and my artist friends that were really struggling, like they were going through some really darker, depressions and things like that, would reach out to me privately and say like, how, I can't draw, I'm stuck, I'm feeling really depressed and down. How do you do it? Like, give me some tips or pointers or something. And I said, oh man, when I'm feeling stuck, I just do these 3 exercises. And, I just started like communicating with everybody that was contacting me, probably 6 or 7 artists at the time. And that developed into having private conversations and learning a lot about how artists think and how I was thinking, and letting them know and just being vulnerable. Like, guys, I'm not perfect. I have coins all over the place where I fidget with. I fidget with these coins all the time. When I was feeling anxiety, not so much anymore. Just giving them tips and pointers. So that evolved into an actual brand because, long story short, I was chasing 2 things. I was trying to develop a new comic book that I wanted more or less. I wanted real readers to read, not just other comic book artists, if that makes sense. I wanted to get out of like my audience being artists. And then the other side was, so I took a course from a friend, like a little coaching session, a third party. And he said, do this exercise where you call 10 friends and you have to call them up like right away and say, what do I bring into a room? And none of them said art. They all said, we feel encouraged when we're around you. And I was like, that's super weird, because I never saw myself in that way. Like, I never reflected that. So his challenge to me was to put out a product quickly, whether it was for sale or free. And I decided to build a list for free to help artists. And it was basically the Draw or Die Club. And it was the 3 exercises. And by the time I put it up and asked my community that I already had, like a small little friend community, it started to spread. So like 700 people signed up or downloaded that product. And I'm like, oh my God, like that was eye-opening to me, that so many artists out there were feeling alone and like depressed, and they couldn't talk to anybody else. And the only people that could talk to other artists were artists. And everybody was really kind of like afraid to talk to each other and be vulnerable. So it kind of felt like group therapy in a way. But I've been doing that for 103 weeks now. So every week I know the week, because I got to write the newsletter 103 this weekend.
Amazing.
And that just kind of evolved. Like the brand evolved. People were like, we want merch. So I'm like, okay, we got notebooks and we got, shirts and things like that to keep them encouraged, and YouTube channel, all that stuff. It's just kind of like a fun thing that I do.
That's amazing.
And it really did. I think people have limited beliefs in your life, right? My limited belief was I'm not an art teacher. Like, I didn't feel like I could teach anybody anything. I didn't feel like I'm the best artist to be teaching things. I felt like I was more of a why to draw channel than a how to draw channel. And I've learned to kind of break through that, where I'm comfortable now kind of giving you how I'm approaching it. Like, this is how I draw a bridge, or this is how I'm doing it. It might not be the right way, or there is no right or wrong way. Like, I'm just drawing it how I see it, and this is how I do it. And if it helps you and it unlocks something for you, then that's awesome. So I'm, that's just kind of, I still don't see myself as a teacher. I just kind of see myself as like a human that's communicating to other humans, and
and just sharing your advice. I love that. And that's probably, if there was a line that I've said more than anything ever in my class or in my journey, it's, well, this is what I would do. So it sounds like it's the same, but totally, it doesn't take long at all, and you don't even have to have a teaching background to watch you, and you're teaching. You're teaching in many ways. So kudos to that. So V Friends, talk to us about, because I looking back, you were at VCon. Talk to us about the first time you heard the word V Friends.
I think the first time I ever heard the word V Friends was probably Gary, when he was first launching it, the big, this is V Friends. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I wasn't checking it out. I was just kind of like, it wasn't my speed really. Like, I was busy doing my own stuff, and I wasn't going to become a collector of anything really. I've collected enough stuff. But that's the first time I heard it. By happenstance, getting my wife had a extra ticket to VCon, said, hey, do you want to go with me? I was like, well, yeah, I'll go check that out. I know Gary Vaynerchuk's stuff, and I followed him for years, and that'll be cool. And I had no expectations. I was kind of in a sort of discovery year in 2023. So I'd just taken a new job after a 10-year career at doing print on demand for YouTubers. I did that for 10 years. And I just kind of was exploring last year. And I ended up at VCon in May. And the main takeaway I took from it was all the great speakers. And there was a lot of like accidental, like I just stumbled into like, whoops, I guess I'm doing guided meditation now. Like, that's weird. Like, I wasn't expecting to be I went to a brunch, NFT Daddy's brunch. They made breakfast for everybody every morning and stuff like that. And there was a young lady there that did some guided meditation, and I was like, I'll play along. I'm going to be open this year and like explore. And I wasn't against it. I just never felt like it worked for me, like meditation or anything like that. And I'm like, I'm going to listen to instructions, and I did it, and it did the reverse of me at VCon. I wasn't feeling calm and like that inner child thing. Like I felt like my inner child was like fiery or something, or like angsty or mad at the world. And I'm like, wow, that's something I gotta figure that part out, And then I think it was that day Deepak Chopra was on stage at VCon, and he said something very similar, and he did a whole group guided meditation. And I'm like, man, if the universe ain't trying to tell me something. So I came back from VCon pretty energized and like, I got to figure out, what does my inner child want to do? And I know what he wants to do.
Sure.
He wants to draw some comics, right? And get back to that. And so that was my journey through the summer, and till I saw the tweet from Gary in October that he was hiring a comic strip artist, and I was like, well, this is like kismet,
Yeah. So this is VCon 23 you're talking about, correct?
Yeah, VCon in May last year. Yep.
Got it. So that was your first V Friends community experience.
Yep.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah. And it was great.
Gotcha. And I mean, it was well documented on May 27th, 2023. You tweeted, I never expected that going to VCon would inspire a major lifestyle change, but here we freaking are. Thanks to Gary Vee and V Friends for inspiring me in many ways. And I have to say, I don't know if it was on your Twitter or Instagram, but just the notes you took, like people are very diligent with the notes, but the notes that you took are so special because, surprise, they come with amazing doodles and drawings from the speakers. Just your thoughts, it almost like it jumps off the page in a different way. So I had to comment on that because it was amazing, and I just looked at it. It just jumped off the page at me. I was like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah, I like to journal. I'm not very good at it because I don't stick with it. I kind of get bored and want to draw more. But in that case, I just had so much to think, I couldn't draw it all. So I just wanted to like write it out, sketch the speakers and my key takeaways. And a big thing that I did after that too was I quit sugar. So I think one of those entries was I quit sugar for quite a while until October. So I quit sugar from like May until October, and then when I got sick, I just started putting sugar back in my coffee, and I finally got off that again. So, but for some reason, no one told me to do that at VCon. Like, no one said like get healthier. It was just like when I was listening to my own body, I'm like, you know what, this is making me feel like crap, so I don't want to do this anymore. Just kind of like having that self-awareness to be like, the stuff that you're putting in your body's making you feel like junk, pretty basic.
So you're completely off of sugar.
I'm completely off of sugar right now. We've been doing 15-hour fasts for the past, I don't know, since like February 20th. So we're doing fasts, eating clean. I'm not exercising as much as my wife is, but yeah, I gotta get in shape because, Gary says we're gonna draw this thing for the next 50 years. So I gotta keep so
you do. That's amazing. Kudos to you. I've had our little blips with fasts and things like that, and sugar is a beast.
Yeah,
sugar is a beast to get rid of and to rid your body of. So my hat's off to you, DJ. So Gary, so you find out like, this is what I want to do. It's always been a part of your life. Gary tweets out in October he's looking for it. So let's double click into the steps there. Did you submit your a formal portfolio? How did that, walk us through from that moment to you getting a shot or a conversation.
Yeah, I think also I had just come back from Vid Summit. It was like the day after Vid Summit or something like that, me coming back. So I'd come off this high of hanging out with my YouTube friends that were like saying the same stuff, like, dude, you should lean into comic strips. Like, come on. And I'm like, no one cares about comic strips anymore. Like, it's still like antiquated thing. I still love it. And there's other cartoonists that still love it, but no one really cares. Like, the excitement around cartoon strips isn't really there. I don't see it out online, people talking about comic strips or being super excited like they were. So that was the energy that was in my mind. And I was actually coming back, and I was sick. So I got the COVID at Vid Summit, unfortunately. So I was pretty sick. And, but I was still like, all right, as soon as I'm over this, cold or whatever, I'm going to record the comic strip stuff. I don't care if anybody, I'm going to do it for me. Because I'm just going to put it on my channel and say, like, this is why I like this. This is what I love about the 4-panel storytelling. I think other artists should do it. And as I was formulating all those thoughts, 2:00 in the morning or something like that, I checked Twitter and saw the tweet from Gary. And I didn't even hesitate. I was like, oh, I know about this already. I've seen it in action. I've seen the community. I was like, wow, what? This is crazy. Like, what are the chances? And every time I stop to think that, like, what are the odds of that? That's so awesome, and I'm not like, frou-frou-y or man, like, it just seems magical though. Things that come together like that do seem kind of magical. And basically my next step was to take action. I didn't email them. I didn't tag them. I just thought, I'm going to try. So I started drawing at 3 a.m, sketching the characters on, like, just, can I even draw these? I'm like, yeah, I can draw these. All right. Tomorrow I'm going to live stream, and those live streams are on YouTube somewhere, where it's the first live stream of me, like, talking about, here's what happened. And I'm coughing and stuff, and, like, I'm still sick, and I'm like, and I think it was the second night live stream. The way that I understand it now, Jeremy Knows had seen it and kind of tagged the team and said, like, hey, check this dude out. He's drawing V Friends right now. And Andy K came in to the chat and was like, hey, DJ, yo, what's up? And I'm like, hey, Andy. And then he shot me an email and said, let's jump on a call. And so we jumped on a call, and he's like, look, I'll get you with Gary. And that was it. Like, as soon as I first met with Gary, he's pretty famous for short meetings because he's very busy. And it was pretty much like, you're the dude. Like, there's other people, but you're the guy for this. He said, like, I've seen all your content. You're the, whatever the vibe was, other people perceived, like, Gary obviously got it and was like, you're the dude. Like, can you do this? And I'm like, yeah. And I pitched the daily. I think they only wanted to do a weekly. And I was like, well, here's my opportunity to do this daily thing that's been on my mind. And I gave them, I laid out this plan, and they're like, can you do this? Is it humanly possible? And I'm like, well, yeah, it's a job. It's what other people still do as a job, but it's a full-time job for sure. But they were like, let's go. Let's do it. Let's fire it up. So
amazing. Well, they love content. So you knew your audience. You definitely knew your audience.
And the live streaming. The live streaming aspect, I think, was, one just to be able to, I had already practiced that a bit, with my own content, and I'm just comfortable doing that. I can go live at any time. And I think that really aligns with Gary's new, being live all the time, kind of.
Like, you were just totally in sync and aligned with everything that was going on. But going back a couple of beats, just especially off the back of you saying, like, no one's interested in comics anymore, to have him, they could have been looking for anything in the world, but he's tweeting the exact thing that you thought the world was done with. That is magical.
And I think, and then it just occurred to me, like, after talking to Gary, I'm like, oh, thank God. Like, of course Gary would understand what I've been screaming into the forest, and no one's like, but Gary totally gets it, because, I mean, from a nostalgia perspective, I can't tell you how many times I've heard on the streams, like, oh my God, I did the same thing when I was a kid, Garfield, Snoopy, all that stuff. And now we've got all these great characters with V Friends, but from the other side of the business side perspective, and what I push as a commercial artist too, is comics and comic strips, we can turn them out faster. than an animation studio or films or TV. Hollywood, all that stuff is very slow moving, like super slow. Traditional children's book publishing takes 8 months, 9 months, 10 months turnaround time for artists, and comic strip artists and cartoonists can really kind of turn these things around fast, almost same day, which is great for topical things, but also just the energy. Like you said, there's also a lot of people behind the scenes that have told me like, wow, this is so great that you're here doing these comics because it's got this new energy, getting to know more about the characters. Like obviously behind the scenes, there is a lot of content about V Friends that hasn't gone out into the world. So like just being able to trickle some of it out in these chunks is really awesome. And we can test it. We can test it in small bits and go like, oh, that's resonating, or this topic or that topic. And so we do all of the data gathering too about like what's resonating with people out there. Like real human topics is what's really resonating, right? Of course. But we also want to balance it with a little bit of having fun with the characters. And I thought about it last night, actually. I was laying in bed going like, what is it about comics? Like why? I'm always wondering why people read comics. Like what is it about the comic that makes people want to read it? Or why do they read Garfield? Or why do they read something? And there's 3 E's that I came up with, and that's escapism, entertainment, and education. And those are the only 3 types of comics that I know of, really, across all the comics that I've ever read and collected. And if you can be kind of all 3, it's like this magical, like Calvin and Hobbes was all 3. Snoopy was probably a little bit of 2 of those. Not as much educational as like entertainment and escapism, but a little bit of philosophy.
Right.
So like, I think there's a magic formula there of how do you become all 3? And Gary definitely has all 3 with V Friends. So
that is very true. Very true. So you get the job, you're the guy, and Gary and I guess V Friends as a whole is pretty known for giving people the rope and running with it. Would you say that that's accurate in your opinion as far as with what you can do with the characters?
Yes. And even as directed, so like I think Gary right from the top was like, listen, these characters, you don't have to be super duper on model. If you mess something up, it's okay because the characters are going to evolve over time. They're going to evolve between this and upcoming things. There's going to be future things that come out that look a little bit different, just a slightly difference. He always says Daredevil. One of the examples he brings up, like Daredevil's original costume was yellow. This artist drew him that way, like costume changes and things like that. And that really does give the artists and creators a lot of freedom. But there's also some guidelines that we have to stay within. And I think that maybe that we do kind of like brainstorm a lot of things together. So the concepts are there, and then I just kind of like start running with it a little bit and then show them back and forth. But I don't need complete clearance if I go off the rails. They do trust my judgment as far as writing and illustrating. So yeah.
So I think obviously I consume a lot of Gary and V Friend stuff. There's good content, and then there's great content as far as getting the really soaking up the origins of what this IP is going to be and the characters are going to be. I think the alpha story / creating comics with you and him, specifically opening a pack and him ideating and just doing what he does best, just shooting from the hip about these characters and what he was thinking, and then you going with it. I think that will be one of the most important pieces of content as we evolve here, looking back in 10, 20 years. I think it's fascinating to see his brain working like that, but it's just to have a seat at the table with you guys. Quick, your thoughts on that? Like, is that how the sessions were, and then you guys just came and just put the camera there? I'd love to just hear your take on that.
Yeah, we've had some scheduled things, but like people need to understand, I've said this before, but Gary's running one of the world's best and biggest advertising agencies, which is I don't even know, like in and of itself, that's amazing. For him to even take time to mess with any of this is also amazing and awesome. And so, you know, we've had some times where it was like, I'm scheduled to be on with Gary. And then, of course, I don't know what came up, but like if Pepsi calls and is like, you know, like there's a priority chain of what needs to be done. So I think we've adapted to be like, you know, Gary's time is very filled. But we do get some back and forth. We're on a lot of other back end meetings about some things. And, but he's the trust, the total trust is there. And I got to say, and I've worked quite a bit in like the entertainment world with like Hollywood stuff. Gary has a way of, and this isn't to like stroke his ego or anything like that, or he doesn't really care about any of that, but Gary has a way of breaking things down conceptually. And I find that innovative storytelling wise, because I'll break down kind of what I mean. Writers and producers and all this stuff, they can be, when there's a committee of people creating things or suggesting things can kind of go all over the place. But Gary has like this vision that's stuck for something like in his mind for these characters, and he's waiting to hear somebody clue in. And as soon as he hears it, he broke it down for V Friends like this. Like, you know, regular storytelling concepts, there's always a strength and a weakness and all that stuff. That's pretty common. But for V Friends specifically, we talk about the middle: red, blue, purple, go into purple. So that's why it's meet me in the middle, right? And each V friend, this new framework that we've developed, and he said it. He said it, and that was the framework. It was like genius. It was like, okay, that makes more sense, and we can develop faster with that framework than going through like all these like hero's journey of the characters and all this.
Yeah,
So, you know,
the cookie cutter stuff.
The cookie cutter stuff. It's just like so much simpler to think about characters that way. I love it. Where we can say like empathy elephant. At his best, he's this. At his worst, he's that. And then who's the other friend that brings him back to the middle? Who's the other V friend? So they balance each other. And that just opens up a world of possibilities for storytelling devices inside of V Friends. So if that's something to think about, I mean, you probably know the character, you probably know all the characters much more than I do, actually. So you can kind of start thinking to yourself, like, which traits balance off what traits?
Yeah.
Like, what do you need? Like, why would patience ever be bad? You know, maybe
Right.
you wait around too long, right?
Exactly.
And you need an ambitious angel, or right? Like,
with the
so you can now see
bubbly,
this. Yeah.
I tuned in for that one. It's fascinating, and I think it's just going to age super well, regardless of the direction of any of these singular characters, or the direction of the IP as a whole. I just think it's super interesting to have this curtain being lifted for what's happening here. And, you know, you're making decisions, thoughtful or just spontaneous. Like, I'm looking at the Common Sense Cow behind you. Like, Common Sense Cow's a girl, we learned from the comic. Like, that's gonna play, and if it changes, it changes. But you know, it's just cool to be at the, you know, this whole podcast that I'm doing is just documenting the origin stories of this. I just think it's really cool stuff. And, you know, and you mentioned Jeremy there, and I know he's on, you know, probably at the table with you a lot during these conversations. But I just remember, you know, when he was in the community doing Twitter Spaces, he would just rattle off, you know, amateur character development stuff for a lot of these things when people were kind of, you know, having financial speculation conversations. He's like, well, I could see this happening with the devil, and he's going to be the arch villain of the whole thing. And then he'd rattle off, you know, 4 to 7 scenarios of how he can do that and he's going to go against. So just super fun stuff. Speaking of that, what has it been like working with Jeremy? Because he's a V Friends historian in of itself.
Yeah, Jeremy's great. And you know, if it hadn't been for Jeremy maybe tagging that, like, hey, I don't know how he did it, but he must have. I do know how he did it now, because we have a special chat that we have for the team where Jeremy will say, like, hey guys, this is going on. It alerts Gary. It's like red alert. Like, this is happening. This is happening. And Andy's always working too. Like, Andy's, you know, all encompassing, like watching everything. So for Andy to peek in and go like, like, it really, so to work with the entire team to answer that question, it's been great. I just said this a little earlier today, and I can repeat it. And, I've worked at different jobs, and, there's always like agendas, like there's office politics, and I'm sure that there's probably some of that I don't see somewhere. But my perception is that it's a really good, like, it's the best team I've ever worked with. Everybody's very aligned on the mission of V Friends. And the mission of V Friends really ultimately is to amplify some of these traits, happiness mixed with ambition out into the world. Like, how do we get people back to the middle, common ground, talking to each other, having some fun, no doubt, and succeeding kind of together while we're here. Like, I kind of feel that from everybody, especially from Jeremy. I mean, Jeremy's got a lot of, maybe he's been on the stream a couple times with me. I really enjoy talking back and forth with him because he has a lot of good character development things, like you said, but he could just speak to a wide range of human things. We're talking just about feelings and emotions, and like, it's just such a good conversation with him. But I feel like the other team is like that too. We have Ezra over on Instagram. We've got, shout out to Allie, doing some animations over on the TikTok. She just did the cool animation with the wizard. So like, these are some of the names behind the scenes that people don't get to see. But like, we have May, who's like been with Gary forever too, and she's running a lot of it's really hard. Like, she must do a whole lot. I can't even tell you exactly the strings that she's pulling, but she makes sure the trains are running and the stuff's going out, and everybody's very connected and talking all the time. We've got project managers. There's quite a diverse team there working on different elements. There's an events team for VCon. I mean, it's very structured, but in a really good way, where everybody's aligned to the mission of pushing V Friends out into the world, right? So, I'm just the lowly comics department here, just the one man army of comics pushing these out. So,
well, I definitely wouldn't call it lowly. I mean, let's stick with that for a second, because this is obviously, Gary comes to a large community. V Friends has its own community that's growing. I call it the Fanatics Live era. We've had a nice new injection of new people from Cards and Collectibles. But what was it like? You're just doing your thing, and now like you join the team, and now like you're this celebrity here that's on stream. You have fans, you have people asking you to come on their podcast. You're signing things. People asking you to sign things. I saw you on Fanatics Live. Like, what has that been like?
Yeah, I mean, it's nice, but it's also, I don't really feel famous or anything like that. I feel like I honestly, it feels, maybe it's a little hokey to say, but it just feels like I've met a whole bunch of new friends. Maybe I didn't have, my circle of friends was very small. Like, my very close circle of friends is very, very small. But I do like that quote that we hear a lot about strangers becoming acquaintances becoming friends, and friends becoming family. Just getting to know everybody, all the great messages directed to me. There doesn't feel like there's like a hidden agenda, like someone's going to try and trick me, or something like that. And it's not always that way. In comic books, there's a lot of, like in the comic book industry, there was a lot of not great, fake friends or hidden agendas, or can I get some of those, Marvel sketch cards, like, it doesn't feel that way at all in this community. So the sense of community, I think, is the most important thing to any creators out there too. And it's kind of like, I just stepped into this existing community, and so I don't really feel like, Gary's been saying it a lot recently, and I've always kind of felt this way, that I don't listen to I do listen to the feedback, but I don't listen to the jeers or the cheers. So like, if somebody's like really praising me, I'm just like, well, thank you, appreciate that. I got to get back to work now. It's all about the craft for me, and kind of pushing that forward, and how can I do better the next strips. We're working behind the scenes right now on actually like really bringing some more messaging out into some of the strips and some of the planning. So I think that they're even just going to get better and better and better. That's kind of where my mind is.
I can't wait. I can't say it enough. You've been doing a fantastic job under the circumstances, because we know how fast things move there. And you're just crushing. You mentioned I'm looking at your backdrop. You mentioned that you were into collecting a lot of things. Collectibles is a huge part of this brand. I mentioned Fanatics Live. Obviously the cards are huge. Pins, stickers, minis, merch, shirts, anything that people will buy. Essentially, curious, like what did you grow up collecting into your adult years? What do you collect? What are you into?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would be safe to say I collected comics of various kinds when I was a teenager, just because of my interest, and that was pretty much it. And then as I grew into, 90s, growing up in the 90s and like the grunge era, there's a lot of Pearl Jam posters behind me and on this wall that you can't see. So a lot of rock and roll posters. So if I go to a show, I'd pick up the poster, or if I knew the artist or something like that, I'd pick up the poster. And then that became like a market in and of itself, like Pearl Jam posters. I could sell
Oh
one
yeah.
poster and it's like $1,600, and I'm like, what in the world? Like I got an extra one. So we always get two, or
Yep.
get two posters. One pays for the whole trip to go see him. So anything Pearl Jam I collected for sure. Looking around now, I collect a lot of field notes, which is a really bad habit, and Blackwing pencils as well. So the Blackwing brand, and yeah, I think that's, as an adult, I started collecting some coins like Peter McKinnon. I don't know if anybody knows who Peter McKinnon is. He has Pete's Pirate Life. He started putting out these coins. I mentioned earlier that I like coins, but he started putting out like random things like brass dice for no apparent reason. Like they've got the little
Oh,
skull
cool.
on them, his little skull. So we're all part of a. Mine is the pirate with pencils, and his is for photography. So he's a photographer and big YouTuber, Pete McKinnon. So he does these merch drops. I don't do them anymore because they're quite expensive, and I'm like, what am I going to do with all this stuff? And I'm not going to resell it because I like it, but I had to stop with his merch drops because I was like, this is just too much. Pete was taking like hundreds of my dollars. So, but yeah, collectible wise, nowadays I've kind of just stopped collecting any. Like, there's nothing that I'm really like desiring, let's say,
Got it.
to collect.
Have you leaned on the cards at all? Whether, you just like a few characters, or have you utilized them to maybe take a look at their scores and help just you kind of like synthesize maybe some storylines or arcs or messaging?
Yeah, I watch the Fanatics live streams. Not all of them, but like I put them on when I'm working, um, just because I like to see like what people are getting excited about. I check to see like what characters are people excited about out there, and why. I'm always interested in the whys, not just like, oh, this card's worth money. I want to know like what is it about that character that's really like that's vibing with people, and
Mhm.
I'll instill that back into the process. I do like that challenge of opening a card pack and developing a strip out of who comes out of the card pack. I think that was
Yeah.
pretty awesome. I want to do more of that. Maybe we'll do that live at VCon or something. That would be great. But yeah, I think I watch all that stuff and I just think that's cool. I mean, I don't really have the desire personally to collect it. And not only that, but I think I've signed some paperwork or something that says like I can't be like a behind the scenes trader of these things
Got it.
working for the company. So I'm just gonna kind of keep my distance from that, but
Sure.
let the fans enjoy it.
It's well, that's a shame because I mean you were probably in the only position out there that it would be you could make a strong case that you could make a strong tax deduction for purchasing VeeFriends cards
Right.
for your to help you with your craft.
Yeah, I'm sure
So
I could work something out. I did find the Macy's toys, like all these Macy's toys behind me, the stuffies. They were on clearance at one of the Macy's in Pittsburgh. So I was like, as soon as I showed
scoop
my
it up.
wife, she's like, well, let's pick these up because these are like they're on the clearance rack. I don't know if that means that they're going to be going out pretty soon, but we're like, let's just grab some of these. And I just wanted them just to have decorations and like surround
Yeah, I
myself
love it.
with V friends a bit.
Is there a character, and obviously this is not
That's
any alpha, any behind the scenes kind of any, at face value, is there any character that you vibe with? I don't if you want to call it favorite or just has a special place early on for you.
Yeah, I think I'm gravitating more and more towards I like Humble Hedgehog just because I like humbleness is a trait in people, like ego is the enemy kind of thing.
Yeah.
As far as like creating with them and having fun, I think it's those first three characters really. Flex and Fox, Humble Hedgehog, Common Sense Cow, like they pop up anytime. But as I've been drawing them for a while now, and we're just getting started, but I like to draw the Alert Ape. He's just fun to draw. Like he's a fun one to like pop in there and just to do. So the ones with the recent ones with the giraffe and the ape, I just like that. I like that combination for some reason. Like maybe it's the color schemes, I don't know. But
I love that.
Yeah.
Is there a character you need to spend more time with, meaning to get by osmosis to kind of consume more of their trait?
I think there's some of the weird characters, like the three-headed, see it from all angles. Like that's strange. Like I don't know how I'm like, how do I just do it? Just draw a bunch of floating heads and it just makes sense. Like I'm always trying to like make it make a little bit of sense. Like why does he have the three? Like where did he come from? Like what's that? Like what is that? Yeah, there's some of those characters that have like the really long names that wouldn't like how do you address them in a comic strip?
Right.
Would they like
The world has plenty of love, start listening to it?
Right. Like how do you have that, be the bigger person? Like that's interesting because I've already kind of figured that one out. One of the behind the scenes videos I listened to, one of the meetings, somewhere along the lines, and I don't think anybody ever really followed it because Gary can kind of move pretty fast. But I've not seen it documented anywhere else. But Gary says specifically that some of those characters are supposed to be characters within the world of V Friends. Like, Be the Bigger Person would be the TV show, like Itchy and Scratchy, that Hedgehog might be watching on TV. And when he said that, I was like, oh, I totally get that. Like,
that's interesting.
There's the little, like, the name of the show is like, Be the Bigger Person. And, like, there's the cloud.
Very
interesting. So I'm like,
okay,
I see that now. It's not just roaming around with this giant hard head, like right. But yeah, that's kind of there's a lot of fun story notes and things like that we're going to try to pull out and kind of develop into comics. So yeah,
amazing. It's so fun to watch it unfold in real time. Before we get to our last quick segment, I just want to again extend some gratitude. I just love the energy. I just think you're like Gary and Andy probably said, you're the guy, perfect fit, like just amazing energy with the doses of education and just the patience and just being an amazing person to be an ambassador for this brand every day, and doing your thing. And and the cherry on top is it's what you wanted to do, and here you are doing it for what I think is a very important and meaningful IP with great messaging across the board. So thank you for taking your time to be here.
Yeah.
So this last segment is called Micro Macro Spitfire. So I'm going to just rattle off a whole bunch of quick ones, and you could go macro, just super general answer, or you could get your microscope out and elaborate if you wish. You mentioned a lot of teachers before, but favorite teacher you had and one reason why?
Oh, it had to be Mr. Crump because of the classroom was a comic strip. Pretty much.
Favorite film?
Fight Club, and I just liked Fight Club. I can't tell you why. Because the rules.
Favorite Pixar film?
Incredibles, I think.
What was your favorite IP as a kid?
G.I. Joe.
What's if a brand or influencer or maybe another artist came out tomorrow with an NFT project, who would it have to be for you to drop everything and just go jump on it right away and buy it?
Oh, that's tough. That's pretty tough. That's a hard one. Man.
You're welcome to pass. I'm not.
Yeah, I can't really. I don't. Like I said, like I was a big Pete McKinnon fan, but he's never gonna do that. So let's.
If you had to, if it became illegal to hold on to more than one social media account, which platform would you keep?
Oh man, Instagram. Just from a visual standpoint, as an artist, I like it better.
Friends, Seinfeld, or The Office?
The Office.
Bougie hotel or hiking and camping in the woods?
Probably a bougie hotel. You'll probably find me at the lobby bar with a nice, old fashioned.
All right, amazing segue. My next one was wine, beer, coffee, but are we going old fashioned still?
I'll say coffee if it was given a choice. I'm back to the black coffee. Yeah.
Favorite concert you've ever been to?
Probably Pearl Jam Indio was like one of my first shows in like 93 or 92. 93. They call it the Shoe the Shoeless show because fans were throwing shoes and there was just like a rain of shoes. And Eddie Vedder was like going, shoe the shoeless, and he was throwing shoes back. And it's a pretty legendary show that I just happened to be, there as a teenager. So it's my favorite.
How many shows have you been to? How many Pearl Jam?
I don't know. 9 or 10 times, I think.
Nice.
Something like that.
Paper Hands Pony or the Koala? Not official V Friends advice. This is just you.
Kino Koala?
Yep.
Oh, Kino Koala, just because I saw that at VCon too, and that was fun.
Gratitude Gorilla or Patient Panda?
Patient Panda, because definitely takes a lot of patience to make comics. A lot of time.
Who's an underrated, and I know it's only been a few months, but in your interactions, who's the most underrated funny person on the V Friends team?
Underrated funny person on the V Friends team? Probably Adam Rips. He's pretty funny. Because I can go a little micro on that. The Superb Owl strip, that was a Adam Rips dad joke in like a brainstorm meeting. He was like, it's too bad we don't have a superb owl. And I'm like, well, I'm writing that down. So like some of those ideas came out of, he's got a really good one with Sensible Sommelier too that I want to do. I won't give up on that, but I won't give that one away. We'll get there.
I love that. Do you have a personal favorite so far?
Strip-wise? Oh man, it's hard. It's hard to pick one. I really like the mountain one with the grizzly and the termite. That was fun to do.
For me, I know you or no one else is asking, but for me, it's I actually wrote it down somewhere. January 13th, 2024. Sorry, Mickey. You tweeted, sorry, Mickey, there's a new mouse in town and his name starts with Mojo.
Yeah.
That was just so meta. The Mickey Mouse, knowing what Gary's building. He's trying to go for Disney, just to see that crossover of the two IPs was so cool.
Yeah.
And it just really struck a chord with me. I love the Mickey Mouse cameo in the V Friends, early V Friends comics.
Yeah, that was super fun to draw too. So, and it was legal. So
it was, that was very timely too. Amazing. So, and lastly, if you could ask Gary one, you have access to him, but if you could ask Gary one question, what would it be?
Oh man, I don't know. Gosh, I don't know. That's a tough one. I don't really have anything to ask Gary because I feel like all the questions have been asked in Ask Gary Vee and like the books, but I mean, maybe I would ask him what his favorite comic book issue was because I know he is an avid comic reader. Like, what was his favorite as a kid? Like his very, very favorite, and why? Like, what was it? And he would know for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, he referencing something as comic book one is something that he does very often, and I'm very, very much looking forward to the day that there's a V Friends comic book one. So thank you for inevitably helping us with that. DJ Coffman, thank you so much for being on the VeeFam sessions. Check out DJ every day somewhere: YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitch. If they allow streaming, DJ will be there making these comics
somewhere. And I don't know if this will be live or in repeat, but I'm going to try and keep that live stream schedule up over on my Twitter and just anywhere that my socials are. So yeah, if you want to catch me live, and if you have any questions about art or V Friends or life or whatever, just pop in there, chill out. We're doing it in the mornings now for a little while. So comics and coffee, kind of kickstart your day, 8:30 a.m. And just come chill out for a minute, say hello, leave a like, and then, go on about your day. Start it with some art.
Great way to start your day.
Yeah.
DJ, thanks so much. We will. This was fantastic. Great meeting you, and we'll chat soon.
All right, man. Cool. We'll see you.